Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another fantastic episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette, and joining me today is Debbie Gail. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm
Thank you so much.
great. You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Debbie. I appreciate you being here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Debbie, can you tell us whereabout are you tuning in from?
I'm in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
Oh, okay, nice. Have you always lived there?
No, I actually grew up in Maryland and I was in Maryland except for about the last 20 years I've been in Virginia.
Oh, okay, okay. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, to start, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, my name is Debbie and I do a number of different things actually. So one of the things that I do is I'm a certified grief educator and I'm a life coach for mostly for parents that have lost a child, parents that have a child with mental illness and or addiction. And I work with them, help them through the grieving process, help them to come to terms with everything because of like personally what I've gone through in my own life experience as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell us more about you. What was your childhood like? What are some things then that shaped you into the woman that you are?
Things that shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't actually feel like it was my childhood. I actually feel like it is more my adult life that has shaped me the most. I think honestly, raising my children, going through going through the challenges that I went through with, with that involved, especially as a single mom, and kind of coming to term when my oldest son was diagnosed with a serious mental illness and addiction when he was 17, and then losing him when he was 26. I honestly feel like those things
Mm-hmm.
have shaped me as I am today the most, more so than my childhood, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Tell us more of those things that are so hard that you've been through. I'm eager to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I, I'm, I was a single mom of three children. I was married to their father, but we divorced when my children were young. So I raised the three of them pretty much on my own. He wasn't involved a lot in my children's lives, especially as they got older into their teen years. And the teen years were, of course, when things got more challenging. And so just being that single mom and, but I was to for me, my children meant the world and still mean the world to me. And we were a very, very close family, the the four of us. So they were close with each other and they were all close with me. My daughter used to call me mom and dad on Mother's Day and Father's Day. So she'd say happy Father's Day on Father's Day and happy Mother's Day on Mother's Day. And but things were really turned upside down when my oldest son Alex was 17 years old. Um, Before that, everything had been pretty normal through his teenage years. He was an awesome soccer player. I loved going to see his soccer games and everything. His brother and sister and him were all really close. He had a lot of friends. He made friends with everybody everywhere he went. And he, was a really protective big brother. And nothing could have prepared me for a conversation that we would have in my bedroom one day when he was 17 years old. In that conversation, he described exactly how he wanted to kill himself by hanging himself with a belt. And he even admitted to attempting that. And I remember just you know, wanting to appear calm for him because he came to me and he confided in me. But inside, I felt like, everything stopped. I felt like my heart stopped. I felt like my breathing stopped. And I just thought, this couldn't be happening. And, the trajectory of our lives changed in that instant. This led to an almost month-long hospitalization where he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. And at the time, I knew nothing about that disorder. And so I really scrambled to learn as much as possible. And for the next 9 years, I worked to support him. But things were so different. He was still there, that beautiful person, but it was so difficult because he became addicted to drugs and alcohol. I almost lost him several times to suicide and to drug overdoses. And I spent many sleepless nights in tears and just afraid. And, the stress and anxiety was making me physically ill. He lashed out and he would always apologize afterwards. He was always so sweet, but it was really difficult because things had been easier before this, and now everything was just so difficult and so different. And about 2.5 years after his diagnosis, I realized that if I didn't find a path to my own peace, I would just become consumed with his illness, his drug use, all the hospital visits and treatment center stays. And I knew that I had a choice. I could either focus on the fear or focus on things that would bring me peace. And I chose faith over fear. And I replaced my need for certainty with contribution to others. And instead of trying to control him, I focus more on things such as advocating for him, loving him. I had to work to really accept how much our lives had changed. And because until I could really come to an acceptance, there was like a war going on within me, and it was a struggle to fight against reality. And I had to let go of that and really just accept that it wasn't what I wanted for him or for our family, but that was the reality. And an really important piece for me was working through my own grief, the grief of the loss of our life prior to his mental illness and addiction. Things were just so different. And on January of 2022, I received a phone call that Alex had been found dead. And he was only 26 years old. And I felt pain like I never experienced before. I remember being on the phone. It was in the middle of a snowstorm, so the officer called me on the phone. I remember just feeling my world collapsing around me. And I had no idea how I would go on. The very early weeks and months, even, I spent in my bed doing everything from the comfort of my bed. And I remember receiving an email at some point a few months after he had passed away about a writing workshop. And I remember thinking I didn't really have the capacity to listen and absorb the information, but I signed up anyway. And by the end, I knew I was supposed to write a book sharing my story of the love and loss of my son through his mental illness and addiction. It was a book that I had begun writing during all those sleepless nights, and I knew it was my purpose to be able to help other parents that were navigating similar challenges so that they wouldn't feel alone and they would have hope for healing for themselves. And I was already a certified life and relationship coach, and I began helping parents of teen or adult children with mental illness and addiction. And then I went deeper and became a certified grief educator, being able to really help other parents who are on a similar journey to mine, really gave my life a lot of meaning and purpose, and also helped me so much to feel connected to Alex. I felt like I call it my purpose work, and I feel like Alex is with me through that. And this is what he would want, is for me to help others to get through similar challenges that I did. And life doesn't always give us what we expect, but through my journey, I learned how to be present and cherish each opportunity, and just really spend time on the things that are truly important to me. And family is just so important to me. My children are just so important to me. And so it really just brought things into perspective in how I want to spend my time and enjoy my moments. And there's difficulties and challenges that come up for me, but when I can stay really focused on cherishing the opportunities and really enjoying the precious moments that I can with my children, then that helps me so much.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Um, I honor your story and the resilience that you have, what you went through. I can only imagine how incredibly gut-wrenching hard it is to lose a child. And I love that you turned your pain into passion and purpose, and you're reaching people, you're helping people. Thank you. I'm diagnosed with schizophrenia. I don't know if I had schizoaffective. I don't understand the difference between both of them. I know I had psychosis, and then the symptoms got worse, and then schizophrenia, right? So it's very hard to manage, and very, very hard. And I think they're doing quite a bit when it comes to the medical team, the resources or police and whatnot. There could always be more that can be done. And I love that you're helping parents who are grieving, because I don't think we talk about that enough, especially with grief. We expect people to just get over what they went through. How do someone get over that, over losing a child? It just blows my mind. And I think we need more people like you to say, this is my experience. There's no shame in it. And also take your time to grieve and heal.
Exactly. And grief isn't something you don't get over. You're always going to you're always going to be carrying that loss, but it's about integrating grief into your life so that you can also find joy again.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit more about your healing journey. I know it's continuous and it's different for us all. As you got out of the pain and grief that you were feeling, or probably still feeling, I'm not sure. What do you do to heal your soul, your heart, your mind, and body? And how did you cope? How do you continue to cope?
Yeah, those are some great questions, especially that you asked about healing my soul, because I do feel like what I've learned and everything that I've studied is that your soul does need healing too, because I don't know if you've ever been in a really traumatic situation where you almost feel like you're looking down upon what's happening. But I remember feeling that way at the funeral for my son, where I was almost like outside myself looking down, just not the whole time, but just for a period of time. And what I learned is that, a part of your soul can kind of step out of your body temporarily, because to protect from the pain and hurt. And so there is healing that needs to be done, and it is a process. So soul healing, I worked on a lot of specific types of meditations for soul healing, but I also think it's not something that's going to happen overnight. I mean, it's something that really takes time. And I think another big part of my healing was really finding meaning and purpose in my life, and being able to sort of integrate the love that I have for Alex and into my life, and know that he is still within my heart, and he's still a part of me, even though I miss him so much physically. Being able to do things that are meaningful. So for example, like writing my book, I was so connected with him, because sharing so many of the stories, and many of the details for them flowed to me on those sleepless nights. And I really think that he was helping me to with the stories flowing to me. So I think really keeping that connection, keeping the love alive, understanding that the love never dies. Like we're always going to have that love, even though we don't have the physical person, and just doing things that are really meaningful. So, like for example, when my kids and I might get together for a holiday, we're going to like have pictures out of Alex. We're going to, talk about Alex. We might reminisce in some of the stories that we all shared, like remember this time when we did this and Alex said this, and just kind of, make him a part of us. And so that way it doesn't feel like you're leaving him behind. You're feeling like he's still coming. He's still coming into the future with me. And so these things were helpful. It also really helped to focus on the present moments and the joy I could find in doing things with my other children and just other things in my life, because otherwise you can get into this pattern, like especially when you've lost a child, of like being scared, like, okay, I'm like, what happens if I lose another child? Like I can't do this. And you can kind of get into the fear. And so really just making that conscious effort to enjoy the life that you do have now, and just, the other thing that helped in healing is allowing myself the space to not push away feelings that came up. So if I was going to have, like, say I was coming along and I had a few good days and I was doing well, and all of a sudden I had a day where I was just, really sad, I would just honor myself, and I would just do what I can to take care of myself in those days, whether it's eating something healthy that's really soothing and grounding, or just allowing myself to just have that day to just feel the way I feel. But and I think that giving my feelings space and not denying them allowed me to move through them. It's not to say that they don't come back and that I don't have other sad days, but I just I don't I don't judge the sadness. I don't judge my feelings. I don't say I'm not supposed to feel this way because I'm doing better now or because I'm so many years out. I keep judgment out of it, and I just allow it to be the way it's going to be. And there are times where I'll hear a song, or I'll go somewhere where you know where I'll have a strong memory of him. And many times the memories at this point are make me feel good and make me feel happy, but there are times where I'll have tears all of a sudden, or there's difficult days like his birthday or my birthday or a holiday, and I'll just let that be. If I get sad, if I start to cry, it's okay. And so I have just found that that really helps me to move through things, and to not judge anything, and to not stay in the pain.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. I love that you shared you don't judge it, because often we judge it. And we not only judge it in ourselves, around ourselves, but we wait or assume other people are judging us based on how we're healing, which they do most of the time. But I think people who do judge, it's a reflection of what they need to heal themselves. That's what I think. And I love that you are remembering him by the good memories. And I got chills as you're talking. And yeah, he loves that. That's the way you're remembering him, by sharing good memories, and the life you guys had, and the amazing connections and times you guys spent together. I love that. I believe with my heart, now that we're talking about this topic about your son, um, he may have a part to play in bringing us together to have this conversation, because I always send out thoughts and connect with the universe, source, whatever you may call it, to bring people to the podcast that can relate, even if they don't relate, but for me to connect to them on a soul level to hear their stories. Let me ask you this. I'm going to reverse the roles for a little bit. Do you have any questions for me, regarding to schizophrenia or anything that I did different? I just felt led to ask you that, so I hope that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's okay. I've actually, it's interesting because I, um, I would, yeah, that would be,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be,
I'm just
because
led and told to ask you that. So,
it sounds like you have figured out how to manage that illness within your life. And I know for my son, it was a big struggle, especially it took years to get the right medications without side effects. And even then, the medications really weren't perfect. And he would go off of them quite a lot. And so I'm just wondering, do you have any sort of things that have worked really well for you to manage that condition?
yeah, amazing question. Thank you. Um, First of all, I went to the hospital so many times earlier in the phase of my illness. It started as my ears ringing, dizziness, and then I'm hearing people's thoughts or what they're saying, and then it just got worse and worse. So I spent so much time in the hospital. And there they tried so many different medications. At times they would put me on a lot, take me off completely. I just felt that I was just a meat suit. My soul was out. It's a type of vile, intense trauma someone has to experience when you think you're existing. It feels like you're in a dream, and you're not. But they've tried many medications for me, and it took years before I could find. I'm on one, two, three, four, four medications, and three of them are, for anxiety and the schizophrenia. But I did find eventually what works for me. I do take them every day. I do go see my doctor as needed, and I have a few doctors, psychiatrists. But it's tough. It's tough. I tell people I wish so much that I could take and put someone in someone's head like mine or what your son experienced. It is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Horror movie doesn't begin to describe the feeling. It's like you're in control. You're not in control. You're trying to say the right thing. Your moods are they're swinging, and your cold, the hot flashes, all of it. But yeah, that's what I did. Just follow up and try different medications to be on. I'm stable now, because I know there's a lot, a lot of stigma, especially with schizoaffective disorders, schizophrenia, and mental health in general. And that's why I will continue to talk, continue to advocate for people like myself, like your son, and many other people to let people know we matter, and we can coexist, we can be part of society, and no need to put the label on because we do that. I do that pretty well. I try not to do it, but I'm here. I'm here to speak for your son, to speak for myself and many other people.
Wow. Well, my heart goes out to you. And I think it's so beautiful that you have found a way to integrate it into your life and to still, to still be able to live your life. And I
Mhm.
mean, I can only imagine how difficult it would be. I learned, once my son was diagnosed, I spent a lot of time learning about it. And I know there's people out there that say like, if you put some kind of, try putting on headphones with, things, voices talking to you and all kinds of things to try to get people who don't have it to understand what it feels like. But in the end, it's really hard for somebody else to really um fully understand. The one thing that I grew to know is that my son is like such a strong person because I feel like to just get through each day and probably each moment, each hour is a challenge. And I know the medications aren't perfect. Like you, it took
Ugh.
years.
Yeah.
He was on three. But they all gave him side effects and they weren't perfect. So it's really, I think it's really hard, and it's
Yeah.
and it's such a shame that there is a stigma, because I also work to try to like get rid of the stigma and advocate for people with
Mhm.
mental illness. I have a show as well that is geared for parents who have a child with mental illness and addiction, or parents who have lost a child. And
Yeah.
I just finished the season, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's I think bringing awareness out there is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And more education as well. Because I know there's lots of training with law enforcement and we need more resources. And I think they need to let people like myself speak because I'm going through the experience, right? Why put someone in position or make decisions of they don't even know having or have anyone in their family who have mental health diagnosis. I don't want help from those people, but I appreciate their help. I want to hear from people who has been going through mental health diagnosis.
I'm glad you brought up the law enforcement. I don't know how it is in Canada, but
Oh,
it's
yeah. Don't get me started, Debbie. I might get in
it's
trouble.
yeah, it's really bad here too. And anybody who
Yeah.
reads the book, I have a chapter that kind of goes through the scenario of what happened with my son when he was in a psychotic when he was having a psychotic break, and I called for help to bring him to the hospital. Instead, law enforcement showed up and he ended up with charges, felony charges. So it was really
Felony?
felony, yeah. So
Oh, wow.
they didn't know, they didn't understand how to deal with him. They made me go upstairs. They wouldn't let me be there. I could hear them talking to him really like harshly and forcefully. So I finally just came down, and they had him face down and they were tasing him. And they said they were
Oh
taking
my
him
gosh.
and charging him with assault with assault on a police officer. And I was just beside myself. It was the beginning of huge court battle. Luckily, we had an amazing attorney who specifically works with people who have mental illness, who get into legal trouble because of law enforcement not understanding how to deal with people who have these types of illnesses. And so she was luckily able to get them reduced to misdemeanors and no jail time. But it's still, because he had then a record, it impacted every time he tried to get a job, every time he tried to live anywhere. In Virginia, it's really difficult to do those things if you have any kind of record. So it really impacted. It even impacted hospitalization. There was one psychiatric hospital that would not accept him because they were in a residential area, and because he had a record that he was not able to be at that hospital. So it impacted so much of his life, and I believe it happened when he was about 19 years old. So it was another 7 years of
Oh
this.
my gosh.
So yeah, law enforcement is a big deal. I think we need more education on understanding mental illness and how to handle somebody who's gone into a psychotic state and needs hospitalization treatment.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that boils my blood. Every time I hear those stories of what happens, it's wrong. Just completely wrong because w we're counting on those people to protect us. And when someone is under any type of psychosis or mental breakdown, the last thing they need is for law enforcement or anybody to be so harsh on them because in their mind, they're petrified. They're looking for safety. So if we do the opposite of safety, they will lash out because they're in this world, they're also not in this world. So they're fighting, wrestling between dimensions and what's happening. And sometimes they don't even know what's happening. How is that different from someone with Alzheimer's who's forgetting
Exactly.
where they're going? That's exactly a little bit of what happens in the brain from my experience, but that's wrong. And they want us to call for help.
I didn't know what
Right?
to do. I was trying to get him to go to the hospital. He wouldn't come with me. I mean, he's physically a lot bigger than I am. There's no father in the picture. I'm a single parent. So I was just trying to call for help. I wasn't calling the police. I was calling, our 911. Many times you can get an ambulance. And I explained what was going on, that he had schizoaffective disorder and that I believed he was in psychosis and I needed help. He needed hospital treatments, a psychiatric hospital. I explained what was going on. I don't understand why they sent the police and not an ambulance. And I know when I first answered the door, I didn't understand why the police were
Yeah,
there at first, but then I was just like, okay, at least somebody came to help me because,
yeah.
it was kind of a crisis at the moment. And I was just thinking, okay, they sent help. This is what, I didn't really think that there was that this was going to be the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's how they treat us. That's why for so long it took me a while to talk and tell people what I had. It took a lot of healing, a lot of courage because people treated me like I was a monster. I may have a monstrous illness, but I can't even kill a fly. I love so deeply. And that's why I don't call them. And I've had them picked me up and they're very calm, the ones I've had, but it could have gone worse. And I always communicate gently what I need. And they said, you either come with us or we arrest you. I said, I think I'll come. Right? They give me the choice and they're getting more and more training. I think more and more should be done. But yeah, that's mind blowing. Mind blowing that it happens. And then another story is, which I think you can relate, is what happens in the psych wards, where they inject you with whatever to calm you down. With that, hopefully they look into if you're allergic to it or not. And I know there's different rooms they put people in. I don't know what it's like where you are. Um, I don't know. There will always be the gap, but I think me and you and many others can also continue to advocate to break that gap.
Yeah, I know the first time that my son was hospitalized, when he was there for almost a month, um, they had him on all kinds of medications that really just kind of made him so drowsy and so out of it. They were awful. They were
Yeah,
really awful.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, of course, when he got out of the hospital, I, found a psychiatrist. I brought him to a psychiatrist. And so one of the first things was to just work on the medications and,
Mhm.
work on getting him off of those and onto something else that would help him better, that wouldn't just make him so incapable of doing anything and even staying awake.
Yep, yep. I'm laughing because I've been on those. I am on those. Okay, so the like that's why I had to be hospitalized. It crippled me to the ground. Like my heart was beating. So it's like I was on drug. I was getting off heavy drugs, like an addict, really. Those are the symptoms that's the closest I can describe it. My heart, I'm dizzy, I'm sweaty, I'm hot, I'm having hot flashes, cold flashes, I'm freezing. My limbs are weak. I'm on the floor, I'm calling for help. And it was I was in there sometimes for a month and a half, a few weeks. They just keep switching it. And yeah, some days I'm a ghost, some days I'm a zombie. My thoughts get scrambled. And I always tell people I'm schizophrenic, so there will be time on the podcast where I'm gonna pause because I'm giving my brain time to connect. And I use pictures in my mind to communicate most of the time. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Yeah. Let's talk about your book. But before we do that, do you have any other questions? Anything else you want to cover?
No, I think that was really good. Thank you for letting me ask you that
You're
question.
welcome. Yeah,
I
if you
just
have more, fire away.
Yeah, I just think it's really beautiful though that you have found a way to still manage everything and, still it looks like you would be a person that still has joy in your life. So I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm a single mom too. So, love and respect to you. It is hard. And they say it takes a village. My village is myself because I got zero family here. Friendship is a no-go. community here and there, but it's tough. It's tough. I've had some pretty brutal days, and this is what brings me joy, just talking to people. That's why I podcast.
Yeah, I definitely feel you because what brings me joy also is doing things that are going to help others. It's basically substituting that need for certainty for things to go certain in our life, which things don't go certain in our life, and substituting contribution. And really, that's what I did, is just being able to contribute to others, to help in any way to make their lives better, whether that is your children or whether it is other people out there who are on a similar journey. So I
Yeah.
totally relate to how you feel, and also the single mom part, of course.
It's brutal. I mean, some people think single moms, oh, I don't know. Especially, I'm not working, especially those who are not working. They think we do nothing. I work my two shift from morning to afternoon or night. I'm just always on call. Yeah, yeah. It's tough. It is. Yeah, yeah. Debbie, I wanted to ask you about grief because I've talked about grief. I continue to experience grief. It's such a tricky, easy, and difficult topic because we all understand it based on our experiences or trauma and things we experience. But tell us, as a grief educator, what are some of the core pillars of healing grief?
Yeah. So one of them is, like I kind of mentioned before, is giving space to your feelings, and not judging them, and not stopping them, because a lot of times our feelings can be really overwhelming. And there are stages of grief that we go through, and so some of those stages are to protect us. So early on we may feel almost like a, we may not feel our feelings fully early on, and that's to protect us, because maybe at that stage we're not ready to feel them all. But once we start to pushing them down and ignoring them, or trying to avoid them, isn't actually going to help us to move through them. um Really, what helps move through them is to give them the space to just allow, to just love yourself, and to really, if you can, do things to just take good care of yourself. And that is really helpful. There are stages that we go through in grief, and they're not linear. So you can kind of go back and forth. For example, you can have anger, you can have sadness, um, you can have bargaining, you can kind of go just back and forth. And that doesn't mean, just because you're out of one and you think, okay, that's in the past, if it comes up again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going backwards. You're not.
Yeah.
I mean, like, early on you might be in a stage of denial, because that might, like, it protects you in some ways, because you might not be ready to feel everything right away. Sometimes, I know for me, when I first lost my son, I almost felt like I was in shock. So it's not like I felt the full extent that was going to unfold of my emotions. Of course I felt, a huge amount of sadness, and it felt just so hard to be able to really function and absorb anything else. But it's kind of normal to move through the different stages. There's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it's normal to kind of just go back and forth. And acceptance doesn't mean that you're okay with the loss. Acceptance just means that you have gotten to a place where you're acknowledging the facts of the situation, and you're not focusing your energy on change trying to change what happened, because we can't change reality. It's already happened. And so really, through these different stages, a big thing is showing yourself a lot of loving compassion as you kind of learn to navigate, a new normal, because basically it is a new normal. You are never, your life, you are never gonna, it's never gonna be the same as before the loss. You are different and your life is different. And it's, it's a lot to go through. And there are certain things that are really helpful. I mean, one is not just when we're feeling our feelings, but to be able to kind of, sometimes people go through a phase of guilt, like, I wish that if you lost a child, maybe I should have done something different as a parent, or maybe I should have known, or maybe I should have, done whatever it is. So many times we kind of make up stories around what happened. Our mind tries to fill in the gaps and say, okay, we creating the story. And so, I should have done this differently. Otherwise, maybe they still would have been alive. And so we have to be able to deal with that guilt, and to be able to let go of the guilt, release that burden. And I mean, the ultimate goal is to be able to integrate this grief and what has happened into our lives, and so that we can be able to integrate the pain with the love, and slowly be able to remember with more love than pain. And that's why sometimes in the beginning it might be really hard to do certain things. They all bring up all the pain and everything, but all of those memories also might also invoke love. And so it just takes time to be able to shift where we're remembering with more love than pain. And grief is just a process, and there's not like a set timeline. There's not any length of time that somebody can say, like, okay, after such and such a time you should be here, or you should be there, or you should be further along. Everybody's grief is unique.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Debbie, if someone want to work with you, connect with your community, how can they do that?
Yeah, so my website is debbiegailcoaching.com, and you can learn more about me there. You can send me a message through there. It has a little bit about my story and my training. It also has a link for my book and a link for my podcast. And it also talks about, I'm going to be starting a grief group coaching program in January. So it's got a page on that as well.
That's awesome. Thank you. I have, I think, two questions. The first one is, what is the meaning of life for you?
Love. The meaning of life is love, because I feel like the love that we have, that we share with others, is what brings the greatest depths of joy. And I know for me, that's, a love with my children, but I think love is just such a powerful emotion, and really embodies the highest experience we can have in
Mhm.
life.
Oh, I love that. I agree. Thank you. My last question for you, what are some key takeaways that you want people who are going to be watching this to get out of this amazing episode?
That you are not alone, and to know that no matter how hard things feel at the moment, how difficult your emotions are, emotions don't the feelings don't stay forever, and you will get through this. And reach out for help. If it's not to me, reach out for somebody, so that you can have somebody who can witness your pain, understand what you're going through, and you can be seen and heard.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Thank you. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for allowing me to express myself freely. Even though I'm interviewing you, I felt and continue to feel a connection. And thank you for allowing me to witness the healing that you've done and continue to do. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to connect with you. And like you said, I think we were meant to connect.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.